All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nathan Lee with the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. It is an awesome honor to be a part of this Dare to Be Great 2021 conference. I want to thank Ricardo for letting me be a part of this, just a small part to help manage all these awesome vendor sessions that he has lined up. And I hand selected this one personally because the guy that's going to be speaking with you today, his name is Doug Showalter. He's a great friend of mine. He's been a mentor really over the years. One of the first people that I met in the 911 industry. So Doug, thank you so much for being a part of the Dare to Be Great conference. Thank you so much for everything you've done for 911 and great company, Showalter and company, do training all over the country. Y'all need to book them if you haven't done it yet. But Doug, I will pass it over to you, my friend. Thank you for being a part of it.
Very kindly. Wow, such nice words. I'm so flattered. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it. And you guys are awesome. So I just love being in this business because you get a chance to meet such cool people that it's just amazing. I mean, I always hear people saying, oh, dispatchers are unique, but they're so great. So I'm always trying to really say how I so appreciate being part of this community. So let's talk today about dispatching during social unrest. And we have enough of it in our society going on right now. And some of it is actually impacting comm centers. I mean, people are protesting. I know a couple people that had a comm center that people are protesting right outside their door. I mean, they were throwing stuff at their building. Well, I've had that experience myself. So back when I was a dispatcher in Los Angeles, I had that. We'll talk a little bit about that today. So the funny thing is, when I came up with this class idea, I was running it past a bunch of people, and a bunch of people said, you know what, Duck, we never really thought about this stuff because we're so fixed on, getting to work, doing our thing. We're not thinking about our own personal safety and our own personal emotional well-being, dealing with the fact that you've got a society that's falling apart. So, I mean, and it's a difficult thing to talk about. So we're going to talk about that today. That's one of my biggest things to think about is, why aren't we discussing this stuff already? Why is it taking this class or just talking about it to get us in our business ready to do these kinds of things? So at Showalter and Company, let me just give you a little bit of a heads up on who we are. Showalter and Company, we have a 6-pack of classes that are completely unique classes. We take, and I've done so much research in the private sector to see what works over there and can we blend it into making public safety communications work better? Because a lot of times we're stuck in that, that's the way we've always done it philosophy. And that's insane. Because if it's not working, let's not do it. It's important to think of these things. Like one of our classes is called Doing Time in Dispatch. And you'll see that one tomorrow. If you want to log in, you can see that. That class is basically kind of our customer service class, but we know we don't have customers. I hear so many times, I've been to customer service training where people are talking about our customers. Well, we don't want repeat customers. We don't want to say, Bill, you robbed that market last Thursday. Can we put you back on the schedule for next Friday? We don't want repeat customers. We don't have customers. We have service. And that's our biggest part of customer service is service. Take out the customer part of that. So that class focuses on how you can improve your customer service without customers. Because you can say, you know what, my service is based on how I treat my community, how I treat each other, how I treat our officers in the field, our fire departments, our allied agencies, all of that comes down to service. So that class really focuses on building that service in you to say, why is it important to provide good service out there? So that's what that one's about. And then we have Training for Success. That's my version of a CTO class, but I approach it completely differently because so many times when I do CTO classes, I would hear people say, well, I'm not sure how to rate people and I don't know. That class basically teaches you that if you're a CTO, your only full focus should be success of that trainee. If the trainee's not making it, it should be your position to say, I've got to do everything in my power to make that person successful. In that class, I show you so many tips, tricks, and ideas to train somebody in today's world, not training the way we used to do it or the way we've always done it, but today's world. What works? How do we engage people? How do we get them on track? How do we keep them focused? That's what it's about. Because I see so many times people are just, we lost another. Really? Have you ever done a cost analysis of how much does it cost to actually hire somebody, send them through the hiring process, and then just lose them and let them walk out that door? Well, guess what? No agency can survive. No public business could survive in that kind of a thing. if you just keep losing money, losing money, losing money. So my deal is I want a trainer to be only focused on the success of that trainee. And that means we got to change our tactics. We got to change the way we do things to make that person successful. And there's a lot of ways to do that kind of stuff. I have a couple of classes on leadership because leadership is so important in our agency. Did you know that in the next 10 years, everybody who's a baby boomer, like myself, will have reached retirement age and will be leaving? And 50% of the market of baby boomers are in leadership positions. So that means all these positions are going to be opening up here within the next 10 years. And how are we preparing people to take those jobs? Are we? I ask all the time, how is your agency preparing the future of your leadership? I don't really know, Doug. They're not really saying anything. Yeah, that's the problem. We need to prepare people that are working right now, or maybe haven't even been hired yet, to lead that department in the future. If somebody's brand new, they're learning how to be a leader, watching the leaders in position right now. And if you've got leaders in position that are basically not leading, that's what they're learning. Don't we want our future of our agency to be good? Because we've invested so much time in our business. We want to make sure those leaders are great out there. So that's a couple of our classes. I ask you to just stop by, check out our Facebook page, our web page, and take a look at those things, showaltercompany.com, and we can check these things. One thing I'm particularly proud of is my association with We Speak Dispatch. I'm one of the co-founders and one of the co-hosts of this awesome little podcast that's just taken off. We started it as, remember when COVID first started and we were having Zoom happy hours with our friends around the country. Then we were all thinking, we're all dispatchers and we all have like things to talk about in our business. Why don't we just start putting it out like that? So that's how it all started. So every week, about Wednesdays, we put out a new, maybe 15-minute little presentation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and every single podcast you could think of. And they're out there for you to listen to and enjoy. And here's the deal. What's so fun about that is we've had over 5,000 plays on Facebook, and we're now heard in 20 different countries. I haven't even been out of the United States, but we're heard in 20 different countries. It's so great out there. So if you want to join us on We Speak Dispatch, please let us know. We'll put you in the box with us and you can kind of talk about whatever topics you have. We love getting guests on that have like a great topic to talk about. And we talk about those things. So we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary. We're in season 2 now, and it's just moving along great. So if you got a chance, go out and check us out on any podcast you could think of, and any Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, everything out there to check it out. We Speak Dispatch. All right, so you're probably saying, who's this guy sitting here telling us about this stuff? Who is he and what's his background? So I'll tell you. I'm obviously Doug Showalter. I run Showalter and Company. And for 30 years, I worked for the California Highway Patrol. And the California Highway Patrol, you got to know, we had 26 communication centers at that time going up and down the state of California. Our largest, which was in LA, had over 200 dispatchers. So it's a really big center. That's where I spent most of my career, in that area. But I've worked in 10 other centers around the state. And about, 10 years ago now, I was asked to take over the statewide training podcast, our statewide training program up at our headquarters in Sacramento, California. The same place our officers go for 28 weeks. New dispatchers, no matter where you're hired in California for the Highway Patrol, you have to go to our academy. For the first part is 3 weeks. You got to stay up there in those luxurious accommodations. And then you go back to wherever you got hired, you get some training. And then you come back to our academy for 2 more weeks of training to kind of build that foundation in you. And that's what it's so great. I had that great opportunity to take over the statewide training program. We rewrote our department manuals on training, on communications. We reworked the way we train things. Our DORs are different. We did so many good things up there, and that's what's so great. When I left there, I went down to San Luis Obispo, California, which is great. It's on the Central Coast. It's a beautiful place. That's where I retired from, and when I retired, I moved. We now live in Tennessee, and it's great. So I still keep teaching around the country, because I've been training around the country for about 15 years. And we started our business in 2015 so we could do it ourselves. And we've been all over the place, including the FBI Academy and all kinds of comm centers all over the place. So check us out. Let us know what you think. But I will tell you, having worked for the Highway Patrol for 30 years, I learned so many cool things. I've been involved with so many, odd things. I'll tell you. Here's a sample of some of the things I've been around for. If you know who Rodney King was, Fellow that my department was chasing down the freeway. He refused to stop one night. They were driving down the 210 freeway in our area, and he exited the freeway up on Osborne in the Los Angeles Police Department area, where there was a confrontation. He wouldn't cooperate, and unfortunately, that incident was videotaped and shown all over the world, which resulted in those 4 officers being arrested for assault, put on trial, and when they got acquitted of the charges, it created the 92 riots in LA, and I worked right down with that. We'll talk about that. Also, I worked the night of OJ being well, he wasn't chased for God's sakes, but he was being escorted down the highway in his Bronco with AC Cowlings. And a good friend of mine, Mark Dickerson, was the guy that answered the 911 call from AC. You know, the one that made the news where AC says, "I've got OJ in the car." And Mark goes, "Who are you?" And he goes, "I'm AC. You know who I am." And it was like, it made national news. And we were always telling Mark, like, "Hey, you made national news, buddy. This is so cool." So that was a great thing to work. I didn't work the radio that was happening on. I was in the room working the East Los Angeles radio, where OJ never went through that part of town. So thank goodness. The Malibu fires and landslides, all that kind of stuff. That was some exciting stuff because we were out in our command post. We were doing all those things. We learned a lot of lessons with that. The Bank of America robbery, if you've never heard about that, just Google it. The Bank of America robbery, these 2 guys fully armored up, tried to rob a bank, left there, couldn't get their car going. So they're walking through the streets of North Hollywood, shooting at everything, outgunning most of the officers in our area. So it was a real crazy time to be at work when that was happening. So just to hear people saying that they're outgunning LAPD, it was like, holy cow, that was something out there to think about. For a couple of big earthquakes in LA, I worked. The Northridge earthquake, that was the one that collapsed the freeway. You've probably seen it on the news. If you haven't, go check it out on YouTube. The Northridge earthquake. You'll see the freeway, the 5 freeway, one of the biggest freeways we got, completely collapsed. And just, it was scary to be driving in that kind of stuff because earthquakes come out of nowhere and you're kind of like, you're now shaking at this point. That's why I'm kind of glad to be out of California. However, what do we have here? The first week we're here, tornado. I'm like, really? Come on now. So now I've had that experience too. And after the Northridge earthquake with 9/11 happened. So I was at work when 9/11 happened. Actually, I was home. They called me and said, turn on the TV and come to work immediately. And I drove out to our office, and that was a very stress-filled time. And then we had the Occupy movement. Remember the 1% and the no percenters, and those kids would go camp at City Hall. Crazy times. Election protests, 2016, 2020. A lot of election problems going on out there. A lot of people protesting. Even in the small area I was in San Luis Obispo, we had a lot of protests for election stuff, social injustices on their part, all those kinds of things. So I've been around for a lot of these weird events that have occurred out there. So I've had a lot of experience. And one of the biggest things was the protest, because our office, I'll show you in a minute here how close we were to the epicenter of these protests in Los Angeles and how scary it was for us out there. So in this class, which is available at 4 and 8 hour blocks, this class, I break everything down into 3 basic groups. I got personal readiness and awareness, professional readiness and awareness, and finally, emotional readiness and awareness. Because these events, social unrest, whatever it might be out there, these things can definitely impact people emotionally. And I don't know, we'll talk about that. You'll see how that works. But I like to approach this issue from a 360 all the way around. What's impacting the whole thing, from talking about what causes riots, how riots are formed, all the way through these categories here: personal, professional, and emotional readiness. So let's get into this. So we talk about, I'm a huge history person, absolutely huge. I love history. I love just looking and walking in places where history was formed, things like that. But a lot of people are acting like almost that this civil unrest is so unusual. Why are people doing this? It's just so scary. Well, guess what? This is not a new thing for this country. 1770, the Boston Massacre happened, where the British soldiers shoot some of the Americans that were there. They weren't even Americans at that time. They were still colonists. But it's like, that's what started this kind of civil unrest. And we've had it forever. My thing is, if we have had it forever, why aren't we ready for it? Why are we acting like it's something brand new? Like, oh my, people are going to protest? No, they do it all the time. We just have to be ready in our world to say, how can I be ready to do these things? Because when you answer 911 calls, you're ready. You've had training. You've thought about it. You've had some education on how to answer these calls. That's perfect. Why are we not doing this stuff with civil unrest? We should be saying, we need to have backup plans in place. We need to have all these things tested. We need to know what to do during these events, personally and professionally, what to do when you're driving to work and you're going to roll into one of these things. So it's important. That's why I wanted to start this today and kind of just talk about it and say, hey, y'all, we need to kind of think about these things. So you'll see lots of different protests there on the screen right now. You see there's the prohibition protests all over the country, the LA riots, 92. You had all these different kinds of riots. So we've had them forever. It's just a question of, are you prepared? Are you ready to go with these things? So, the Supreme Court, in the First Amendment, it says you have the right as an American citizen to peacefully public assembly, which is protesting. You can go out there with your signs. You can go out there with your banners. You can do all that stuff. As long as you're not blocking traffic or causing problems, you can do all that stuff. This is a free country. You can do that kind of stuff. And that's a guaranteed right under the Constitution. So that's it's okay to have these things. I know some people get, scared when they see people on the corner and they're like, oh my gosh, but if they're not doing anything except holding up banners and flags, things like that, whatever, that's okay. That's what this country was kind of founded on. That's okay. We can do those things. So it's important. Most civil unrest incidents can be described into basically 4 basic categories. And they are, the first one is economic and social injustices. You know what those are? When people are saying they're not paid enough, or there's bad laws in the book, or whatever it might be. Those are economic and social injustices. When people are screaming that the 1% is not paying enough taxes, or whatever it might be for them. The other one, another category, is sports and entertainment events. Bet you never thought of that as a riot. But if you think back to when Boston Red Sox won or the Lakers won, people lose their minds. And they go flip over cars and light things on fires and do all these things. They're not mad. They're just way over the top excited. And they're trying to do things to just show this excitement, which creates problems because they get crazy. And that's when people get hurt. That's when it becomes a riot and not a protest at that point. The other one is politically motivated. When the elections happen, you always get people complaining all the time. So it happens out there. So we need to make sure we don't have those things. Politically motivated, the town I was in, San Luis Obispo, was kind of funny because when in 2016, when the election happened, we had a lot of protests, but these were not professional protesters at that time because we had our undercover people in the groups. So they could kind of tell us, like, here's what they're saying, here's what's going on. So they could kind of call us and tell us what's happening. The funny thing was they were walking around this like mile square in our downtown. And they made like one big loop of all these people. And then our undercover people called and said, a lot of these people are complaining that their feet hurt and they want to go home. So after they did the second loop, that our undercover people said a lot of people want to leave and they're leaving right now because they don't want to be here. It's too hot and they don't want to walk around too much. I'm like, these are not good protesters. They don't know how to do it. So I'm just know what those things are. And the other one is the one we've been having a lot lately, reaction to police actions. If there's a shooting, if there's something going on, things like that start happening. So we need to kind of like think these things. That's why when a lot of people say, oh, these riots will never impact us. If you have officers in your town, is there a potential that they could cause something? Yeah, absolutely. They sure could. We have to think about these things. So what's the difference between protesting and rioting? Protesting, First Amendment, we just talked about that, the Constitution, that has the right to peacefully protest something society they either disagree with or support, whatever. That's protesting. That's out there with your signs, your banners, doing all that kind of stuff. That's great. Riots, a protest turns into a riot when it involves destruction of property, a use of weapons, when it no longer is, or when people start getting injured and hurt. Once rioting begins, they're no longer protected under the First Amendment. That's why you have your officers saying, this incident has been declared a riot and you're to immediately disperse. That's why they're telling them you're now a riot. You're no longer a protest. You're now a riot and you got to disperse, even though they probably won't. The line between protesting and rioting is real blurry because you get people in both these things kind of moving it around. So you got to have to be, when you hear the word protest, it could easily turn into a riot. And you need to know that as we talk about this thing. So it's very important to think about. Usage of weapons. I mean, right now, they're using a lot of different kinds of weapons against the police and against citizens and things like that. And we need to you need to be aware of the weapons they're using out there. I mean, a lot of them that they're using now, knives, bricks, bats. You've seen a lot of fireworks. There's industrial fireworks. They're firing at the police officers. I mean, those things are extremely dangerous. They're basically a bomb, and they're setting these things off to shoot into the police lines out there and stuff like that. So that's a pretty dangerous one. Frozen water bottles, cans of soup. I don't know if you saw that CNN crazy broadcast they had. They were at some protest or riot, actually. And this guy's walking by the reporter who's talking, and he says, "Excuse me, I see you're carrying soup." And he says, "Yes, I'm going to go home and feed my family." He's not going home and feed his family. They're using cans of soup to throw at the officers. It's like a dang, hard object they're tossing at our officers. So even he winked at the camera when he said it. And I'm like, why didn't the reporter say something like, "Really? You're not doing that"? But he didn't. He just kind of winked at the camera. "Yeah, I'm going to go feed my family this soup." That's not true at all. That's not it. And they're also using umbrellas. I got a great video I show in the actual class where they show how umbrellas can be used for a lot of different things. They actually make the pole for the umbrella, you turn the umbrella out, that it becomes a spear at the end, and they're throwing these things at police officers. So, I mean, that's extremely dangerous. They're also using these umbrellas to cover assaults. When they're assaulting somebody, they'll all cover them up so they can assault somebody and then go away. And nobody knows who's doing it. They're all masked up. Nobody knows who's doing these things. So we have to be aware of that danger that our officers are experiencing out there. So they also conceal all kinds of weapons in these when they got their umbrellas out. And you see the crowd roll umbrellas all over the place. It's exactly what they're doing. They're hiding weapons. They're doing all these things. They're using tear gas, high-powered lasers. If you look at the riots that were in Portland and Minneapolis, they're using lasers against their officers, trying to blind their eyes. So this is dangerous. This stuff is extremely hazardous to our officers out there. For my department, we used to have we still do, have a lot of helicopters and airplanes, and people were always shining lasers at our pilots, which can cause them to crash. And that's a very dangerous thing out there. So, I mean, these protesters are getting more advanced all the time. I mean, if you don't stop people from doing this stuff, they just get advanced. They start learning from things. One thing that you probably should be aware of is at the middle of that screen it's on your screen right now, that's a pickup truck that was parked at a park nearby where this riot was going to take place. And that pickup truck has bricks, bottles, bats, all kinds of stuff in it that can be used as weapons. It was just parked there. And then conveniently, as the people were walking to the protest, they could grab stuff out of this thing and become a weapon. So if you take a 911 call of somebody saying, "Hey, this guy just parked a truck here and it's loaded with all these bricks," you better tell somebody, because this could be staging for a riot. I mean, that's why we have to think about these things. A lot of people don't. But I'm telling you right now, these are things you should be thinking about, because the usage of these weapons is only for one thing: to hurt people, to kill people. And if our officers are in their way, they could be definitely injured. And many of them have been injured. A lot of them have been injured from these things. So we got to think about this stuff. Now, here's the interesting part of this. So we have unrest, and I showed you the 4 categories of unrest. So it breaks down even further, because now you got the mob that's in the protest are the riots. So now you have different kinds of mobs that are inside these unrest situations out there. So you have an aggressive mob. These are people in the mob, in the riot, that are running around. These are the ones that attack people, terrorize people, threaten people, beat up people. These are those people inside that protest riot thing. These are the ones inside that are really like agitators. They're causing all kinds of problems out there. So then you have the escape mob. These are not to be afraid of. These are people running from something. If there's a riot and they're running away from it, or remember 9/11 when you saw all the people running down the street, it's a huge mob of people, but they're not aggressive. They're fleeing from whatever's attack or whatever's behind them. So that's an innocent thing out there. The other one's an expressive mob. These are people that they won the Lakers or the Red Sox or whatever, and they're out there celebrating like crazy, climbing up on light poles, and then they start getting destructive. That's when things start happening. When they start getting destructive, then they become an aggressive mob. So they change. I mean, this is the transitions in these civil unrest events, how they transition into different things. And you should be aware of these things. And the other one is a looter mob. When mobs become looters, it's usually because the businesses that are inside these areas where they're protesting and rioting have little or no security. They really don't. Because why? the officers usually are protecting bigger targets. They're protecting buildings that are like the government buildings, police stations, things like that. And they don't have time to go protect a Target or a Walmart or a mom and pop shop that's getting looted. They just don't have the personnel to do that. And the rioting people know that. That's why you'll see them with absolute no sense of, I shouldn't be doing this, stealing TVs, stealing all kinds of stuff in these places, because they know there's no police around. They know that nobody's going to stop them at this point. So it is a very dangerous thing, because during the LA riots, you had store owners who were heavily armed and were out in the middle of the street shooting. And it was like, this was a Old West shootout down there at Florence and Normandy. So it was a difficult situation. But that's the transition of civil unrest from a protest to a riot. And then the people inside those things, the aggressive mob, the escaping mob, the expressive mob, or the looter mob. I mean, that's where these things are very, like, it builds itself up. You can see it kind of building as it goes. So it's kind of a neat thing to think about. If you don't know this reference already, and I tell this all the time in classes, and a lot of people still have not heard of this thing. And I'm like, we all should be very well aware of our resources that are available to us to help us do our jobs better. This is the Homeland Security digital library. And if you go to that web page, and if you go to where the arrow's pointing, it says lessons learned, information sharing, you can type in any topic and it'll give you all kinds of lessons learned about events, whether it's an earthquake, a fire, a riot, a shooting, whatever. And it tells you all about the incident and tells you what worked, what didn't work, what they need to practice on, all that stuff. I mean, some of this stuff is absolutely interesting to kind of read through and think to yourself, what if it happened here? Am I ready? Can I do these things? I mean, that's a great resource, and I hope you all check it out because it's such a cool resource. Here's some of the stuff that's in it. These are two of the things that are in that. One's on the lessons in command and control from the LA riots that I was part of down there, so you'll see that. And the other one's talking about the treatment of riot control agents, which are usually like toxins, things like that out there. But these are great topics to go look at and ask yourself, am I ready for this? Is my comm center ready for these kind of things? I mean, the 92 riots, the one that I was working during, you'll see that's when that was the 4 LAPD officers on your screen right there. That was when they were attacking Rodney King, or he was cooperating, whatever you want to call it. And that's when this thing really turned very nasty at this point. You'll see that screen, the little patch at the top of the page is the Highway Patrol office where we were located. And the fire down below is where Florence and Normandy, where the actual epicenter of this rioting situation occurred down there. We're only several miles north of that incident. And we were experiencing a lot of people throwing things at our building. We had the National Guard surrounding our building at that point. It was all blacked out. They took off all the signs that said Highway Patrol, all the flags. They took it off the walls because they didn't want anybody to know, but they already knew it was police station, for God's sakes. It was our communication center. So it was right in the middle of this thing. And you see they had 63 people killed, 2,400 injured, 12,000 arrests, and $1 billion worth of damage in LA at that time. So when people say, oh, the rioting's going on, it's something new. It's not something new. It's something I experienced. And one thing that I will tell you, my entire time working in downtown Los Angeles, when this was going on, I don't remember anybody in a management or supervisory position reassuring us of our safety, providing us with, it's okay. It's all right, people. It's okay. We can handle these kinds of things. They didn't. They were basically like, get to your position, start answering calls. I was working a tactical radio at that time. And it was like, I don't remember anybody sitting us down saying, I know this is a difficult situation. I know it's stress-filled for everybody out there. And here's what we're doing to protect you guys. Here's what we're doing. We had the National Guard there, but really that was, I think, because of the building. They were protecting the building. And us were driving into this mess every day. So, I mean, think about those things that we talk about. That's actually the office I worked at. That was our LA Communications Center. Since it's been moved, it's now moved to Eagle Rock in this beautiful part of town. It's a 4-story, absolute high-tech building. Looks great. That was a building I worked in, though. And you can see it was really a Taj Mahal, if you will. So it really wasn't. So that was the place. With today's unsettled climate, I mean, I don't care where you are. Every city, every town could be subjected to civil unrest. If you have an event occur in your town, you could easily pick up a lot of people going to come into town and cause havoc. I mean, we have these things. I mean, look at the list of cities I got for that. Bakersfield, Columbus, Ohio, Des Moines, Phoenix, Kenosha, Ferguson. These are not the biggest towns. They're not New York. They're not LA, San Francisco. But these things have had riots in these places. And we need to be aware of this stuff. And we need to be ready before an incident actually occurs. So let's talk about personal readiness and awareness. This is our first section of this pie. We're going to talk about personal readiness and awareness, your personal readiness. In this kind of a situation with what's going on right now, we should be practicing risk avoidance. But if you work in an area that's kind of having riots go on or something happening in your town, you can't avoid it because you got to go to work. So then you got to practice risk reduction. And risk reduction says, I'm going to drive into this area, but I'm going to be planned. I know my preparation's in place, and I'm aware of what's going on and how I can handle myself in these things. So because we have to work sometimes in not so good areas, we need to say to ourselves, okay, maybe I can't avoid the problem, but I'm going to reduce my risk by being prepared, plan out some activities and plan my awareness, get my awareness for actually going out there. Let's talk about that. Situational awareness. Simple. Situational awareness is basically knowing what's going on around you. So many times people just walk blindly. They walk into a store. They don't even think about what's going on. Look around. We're professionals in public safety. We should be experiencing these kind of things. I'm not saying be a crazy prepper. I'm saying be aware of your surroundings and be aware that if somebody's out there that you can say, oh, hold on a second here. I'm going to have to be aware of this situation. I mean, do you watch the local news? Local news will say, hey, there's a planned protest about this going on today downtown. Do you have to drive through downtown? Now you know if I drive through downtown, there's something going on down there. I need to be aware of it. Do you wear a patch or some kind of logo or emblem for your agency? If you're driving along and you've got these patches showing, could people mistake you for law enforcement and say, there's a cop right there? I'm telling you right now, if you roll into an environment that is on fire, and I mean that not literally, but an area that's hot, and you're wearing this kind of stuff, could you potentially become a target? Absolutely, you could. Be aware of that. Situational awareness. Do you notice large crowds gathering when you're driving into someplace? You're looking like, man, there's a lot of people on the street right now. What is going on over here? Something's happening out there. Did you receive information of a scheduled protest? Did your officers tell you, hey, we got this going on in town tomorrow. Just be aware of it. It shouldn't be anything. They're predicting it's going to be peaceful. So just be aware. Be aware. And how about alternate ways into work? When I drove into LA, I had to take the 101 freeway to our office. However, there were many other ways to get into our office, and we drove them to make sure that they're accessible. Because it's not enough just to know, well, I know I can always go around and see what it's like, because sometimes they close streets off. Sometimes the street's blocked with whatever's going on over there. Drive around and see these areas you're in. So you're aware if I have to alter my course and I can't go straight into work, I can go this way and go around. And I know that works, and I know I can get through there. So it's important to know those kind of things. I mean, I hate to be telling you this stuff like it's scary, but it's not scary. Situational awareness, whenever you're into a building, look for exits. I mean, did you know most restaurants have an exit through the kitchen? If you see something going on in the restaurant and you want to get the heck out of there to avoid any trouble and risk reduction, go through the kitchen and get out. Go that way. I don't think anybody should have to confront anybody. Or you see this thing on your screen right now where they're attacking some lady who's just eating on an outside restaurant. I mean, you see a crowd coming, I'm getting the heck out of Dodge. I'm leaving. Try to see if we can see the main entrance. When parking, back in for easier exit. Look around when leaving or approaching your vehicle, even in a shopping center. When you're walking in a shopping center and you're walking along to your car, take a look. Is there somebody sitting in the car next to your car, just sitting in their car? I'm not saying get crazy and start, mad dogging this person. I'm just saying be aware there is somebody sitting in that car, because if that car door opens as I pass, I'm going to be aware of it. Shopping carts are great, because if somebody's walking towards you in the parking lot and they look very aggressive, that shopping cart's going to buy you 3 or 4 feet. You put it in front of you, it's going to buy you that kind of protection. So, I mean, we want that kind of stuff. So be aware, situational awareness. How about vehicle preparedness? A lot of people don't even think about that. You drive into these things. If you know your area is going to be hot, like hey, when I go to work tomorrow, they're probably predicting these things. Fill up before you get there. You do not want to be at work going, yeah, I'm almost out of gas. I'm going to go after work and get some gas someplace. You do not want to do that. That's dangerous. Do you have basic essentials in your car? How about a first aid kit? You'll see the stats over there say 44% of people don't have a first aid kit. When I teach this class, I always ask people, what do you have in your car that's first aid? So many people say either one or two things. They'll say, I don't have anything. Or, yeah, I keep meaning to get some. Today's a notice, get something. Get a first aid kit. They're cheap. They're at Target, Walmart, they're on Amazon. put in your car just for safety's sake. For gosh sake, if something should happen to you or your family, you've got a first aid kit, Band-Aids, tourniquet, whatever you got, have it in there. I mean, maybe just grab a backpack from Target, one of those cheap ones, and just start putting stuff in it. Put it in the back of your car. You got supplies now. I mean, that could be for anything. If there's an earthquake or there's a hazard, something going on, you need to stay there. Your car's now got a flashlight, extra batteries, first aid kit, water, snacks, blankets. I mean, just something in your car to protect yourself. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Just be aware. Put stuff in there to prepare yourself. One thing that we had to get when we moved to Tennessee here was they kept talking on the TV about, do you have a emergency radio for, with tornado things? And I'm like, why would we need that? Well, they kept talking about it so much, I went and bought one. Now I have one of those emergency radios, and it's in our second bathroom down here where we can hide if something should happen, tornado or something. That's odd. How about driving awareness? I used to hear this all the time. This guy's tailgating me when they call 911. This guy's tailgating me, and then I hit my brakes. Are you crazy? In today's society, you want to brake check somebody? I would not recommend doing that because that is very dangerous. If somebody's tailgating you, move over. Get out of their way. To put your turn signal on and get out of their way and let them race on and go where the heck they're going. You don't want to get into a confrontation. This one that you had playing over here for a second, this is one that was in my area, that little thing out there. Simple road rage, and the guy lost his mind and actually started attacking somebody. So just absolutely crazy. Tailgating for you. You should not be tailgating. Here's the deal. When you're pulling up to a car, leave at least some distance between you and that car in front of you. And here's a little way to do it. Look at the tires of the car in front of you. You can see the bottom of the tires in the car in front of you. Perfect. Because that's going to buy you enough space to get out of that spot if you've got to. If you've got to jump up on the curb and get out of the town, do it. That's what I'm saying. I see people all the time at stoplights, and they get this close to the car in front of them. If something should happen and there's a mob running in the street, you're jacked at that point. So know that stuff. I mean, keep a 360-degree awareness. Just look around when you're driving. Don't be crazy. Just look around. I mean, there's a carload of people over here that looked a little suspicious. I'm going to be aware of it. That's it. Horizon driving. That's where you're not looking at the car in front of you. You are, but you're also looking at the car in front of him. Because if that guy jams on his brakes and this guy misses it, he's going to hit and you're going to hit. But if you've already been watching, you're going to slow down already. That's horizon driving. If you're questioning your safety, put your windows up, lock your doors, and don't stop. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, close your air vents. If you see smoke or some other thing in the air, close your air vents immediately. Put them on recycle. Don't do this kind of stuff. Remember, avoidance is the key. If you see something in front of you that looks scary or dangerous, whatever, get out of there. Risk avoidance. Get out. Go somewhere else. Stay away from a riot if possible. I mean, legally, if you look at this guy on the screen right there, he's driving along. He's not stopping, but his window is open. He's engaging these people. Why would you want to engage anybody? I'm not saying nothing to nobody. I'm getting out of there as fast as I possibly can. I mean, legally, you can't run over people, but I noticed there's a little caveat on that because unless you live in Florida or Oklahoma, they just pass laws say you can. That if somebody's blocking it and you have to go over to protect yourself and you run over somebody, you're protected. So don't do it unless you're in Oklahoma or Florida. All right, I just want to give you an advisory. I am not recommending or endorsing anything on the next segment here, but if you choose to have some sort of personal safety device, whatever it might be, whether it's a taser or an alarm or whatever you've got, just understand its usage. I mean, be aware of the effectiveness of something like that. Many of those devices you probably have are just designed to give you time to escape. That's it. They just want you to get out of the way. I mean, it's important when you think about this stuff. Nobody's going to tase somebody and then stand there going, are you okay? Are you all right? No, you tase and you get out. If you spray somebody with OC or tear gas, whatever you've got, spray and get away quickly. Go. That's what it's designed to do, is buy you that time. Those are less than lethal type things. But each one of those personal safety devices, they each require knowledge, how to use it. I mean, if you've got tear gas, make sure you read the book on how to use this stuff. Flip the top, spray it in the person's face or whatever it might be. I mean, there are all these things. You got to have training on what you're using out there, whether you're using a one of those little tiny pins that are like solid pins where you hit somebody in the temple, probably kill them like that, or training and an understanding of the legal consequences. Are you allowed to legally spray somebody or tase them or shoot them just because you want to? You got to understand the legal consequences. And the biggest one of all, you have to have the willingness to actually use it. And that sometimes creates problems because people say, oh, I've got this and I'm going to do it. And then it comes down to it and you're faced with this thing right in front of you. And now you have to make a decision. Do I use it to its full capacity or do I just spray and run? I mean, you have to understand what comes with these personal security devices. I hear people all the time saying, oh, yeah, I got this or I got that. I'm like, are you willing to use it? Think about it. If you do something to somebody and cause them harm, they can sue the heck out of you. You have to be willing to understand the rules of these things. So know that going in. How about professional readiness? Professional readiness and awareness, thinking about it while you're at work. Types of incidents that could cause disruptions at your work. Local protests. You can't get into work that day. Civil unrest. Natural disasters. Earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, whatever you've got out there. Those could cause dispatch disruptions. Wow. Equipment problems. Outages. Failure. I mean, I know the CAD never goes down where you are. Really? Yeah, I know it does. So those things happen. How about intruders? Have you ever even thought about what if somebody gets into your comm center? If you have public access to your building where they come in, they can sit at the counter or whatever, could they potentially jump that counter and get into your place? Think about it. What would you do if you have an intruder in your building? I mean, I hear a lot of people saying, well, we got officers. Well, my office, every office I worked at had officers, but they were usually out on patrol. They weren't hanging around our building. They're usually out. So if you don't have that, think about what you would do with these things. Events just out of your dispatch center. They're in the street out front of your place. How do you get in there? Instance while at work. While you're at work, you're noticing the whole city's like people are riding all over the place. You're leaving in 10 minutes. How are you leaving? Do you even follow the rules? Do you even know like, oh my God, I got to go this way. I got to turn that way. I got to get out of here. How do I get out of my parking lot? It's important to think about these things. I mean, do you always make sure the doors are closed and locked? I see this a lot. I've been to a lot of comm centers around the country training, and there have been a couple that I've walked straight into the comm center. And nobody's even asked me, like, who are you? Maybe they know me, but it's like they don't. I mean, I've walked in and people are like, who are you, man? And I'm like, well, I'm here to train a class. Oh, yeah, okay. I'll go find somebody for you. It's like, that's how secure your building is. That's crazy. I mean, it's a big thing out there. If you have a gated parking lot, do you watch for cars coming in after you? You pull in and they pull in behind you really quickly to get in there. If you go outside your comm center to go smoke or go hang out in the parking lot or do whatever, do you look around? Make sure there's nobody hanging out there that you can see out there. Do you know where the fire extinguishers are? Fire extinguishers are great for spraying at somebody if you want to stop them or, you know, putting out a fire. I mean, those things are good too. How about when you're leaving the office? Do you check the parking lot before you walk to your car? Do you look out the parking lot and you're like, ooh, man. I mean, do you ever consider what if you did see somebody in the parking lot? What would you do? Would you confront that person? Would you say, hey, get out of here? What would you do? I mean, think about that. Do you have supplies at work in case you have to have extended shifts? Do you have anything in your car? Remember earlier? Do you have anything in your car that would help you stay over? I've got an extra change of clothes, or I got some stuff out there I could use, or whatever it might be for you. I don't know. How secure is your building? It's only as secure as you make it. You leave doors open. You don't check for things. It's only as secure as you make it. I mean, could somebody enter your building? Could they get into your comm center? Now what are we going to do? How do you lock the doors? How do you evacuate your building? Do you have some kind of code you put out on the radio that, hey, we're leaving. We're getting the heck out of here. We're gone. There's a fire or there's some hazard or somebody's in our building or whatever. I got to tell all my field responders I'm leaving. There'll be nobody here for a few minutes while we run out of the building. I mean, it's important to think about these things. How about perimeter fencing? Do you ever walk around your property at your office and just look for security issues and say, ooh, that fence doesn't look very good. That fence is falling down. My office with the California Highway Patrol, they put up razor wire at the top of our chain link fence around our property, around the parking lot, but they ran out of razor wire, so half of it didn't have anything on it. So I was saying, do we need to put up a sign saying if you're going to try to break in, go over there, go that way? Craziness. But just consider how secure your building is. Does it have lights in the parking lot? Are they on at the right times? Do they provide enough lighting for your whole parking lot? Consider these things. I mean, Minneapolis, when their backup center was burned down, the 3rd precinct, that contained their backup center. The people that took the building apart went in there and got the radios and started talking on the radios to confuse the responders in the field. I mean, that's a mess. When you think about that, I read that story and I was like, oh my goodness, that's just something to think about. How about emergency operations plans? Do you have one in place? If they tell you, okay, everybody, we're going to go to the backup center today. How do I get there? What if they're out front in my place rioting out here? How do I get to my backup center? Well, is the backup center, does it know the people that are coming on duty are going to be coming over here to meet with us? I mean, people leaving work, are they going to leave and then they're going to go to the new building? Who goes to the new building? Who stays here? What's at the new building? Do we have all the current phone numbers, all the current addresses, all the current everything we need over there at the new building, supplies for us over there, water, things we could use over there. So the plan should be reviewed regularly. It should be checked all the time out there. Emergency operations plans. I see people all the time saying, oh, we don't have any supplies at work. Here's a real simple way to have supplies that are easily accessible. Buy yourself some of these trash cans with the wheels, fill them full of your supplies, put them by the back door. If anything happens and you got to run from that building, you wheel that thing out with you and it's got everything with you. It's the simplest thing possible. It's a simple thing that you can actually take with anybody can wheel that thing out the door with all kinds of supplies in it, food, safety stuff, first aid stuff, books, whatever it is out there, you put them by the back door. We did this. We had them sitting by our back door full of all kinds of equipment and things like that. So it's important to kind of be ready. How about this one? Finally, emotional readiness and awareness. I mean, are you ready for this kind of a thing? I will tell you that this is one of the biggest things of dealing with civil unrest, because if you haven't really thought about the impact of watching your society fall apart, and that's what's difficult, because you see, wait a minute, people love the police, or people love this. What the heck is going on where people are saying defund the police, abolish the police, get rid of them? You know, you see this stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. When we had the riots in LA, because we were not that far from the epicenter where it all occurred out there, we had people that had kids at their home in those areas that were panicking, saying, my kids are at home by themselves, and they're in that area that's rioting down there. So, I mean, consider yourself. Think about these stressors. Your agency should be providing safe stuff for you to say, look, this is how we take your safety. This is what we're going to do to protect you guys. So make sure when you're on your way to work or leaving work, we're protecting you. Here's what you need to do. Here's all the safety advice you can provide you. That's what most agencies should be doing. And unfortunately, they're not. So they're not doing that kind of stuff. I mean, most dispatchers think we're control freaks, right? Everybody's like, I'm a control freak. When you see stuff like this going on in our society where everything's falling apart out there, that kind of makes you get very unsteady. Like, I'm not sure what to do at this point, especially when you're watching it happen in front of you. In our building at LA, people were throwing bottles at our building. You could hear bottles hit our building when we're dispatching. That is unnerving to think they want to get in here. I mean, what if they get in our building? It's like we have to think about these things. We have to provide that sense of safety, security, and overall well-being so we can continue with our job of answering calls and dispatching units and doing all these things. Agencies should be preparing each one of you. They should be doing that stuff. Personalization, I told you, we had people that had kids down in these areas, and they were like, you know, right in the middle of a riot going, should I go tell my kids to get out of town? Should I go down and get them myself? Should I leave work? What should I do? I saw very little direction back in the early 90s of what we were supposed to do. I mean, I tell everybody now, we should be thinking about that stuff right now. We should be planning, preparing, and getting ready for this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff. So it's important to have that. So finally, my final thoughts to y'all is avoid the situation if you can. Risk avoidance is the big thing. If you can't, then practice risk reduction. Risk reduction by planning, preparing, being aware of what's happening in our society out there. These are important things to think about. Planning, it's not that hard to plan. Put supplies in your car. Take this as a notice to say, hey, y'all, maybe I should go put something in my car. Maybe I should be a little bit ready. When I teach a class on how to get people out of a sinking vehicle, I'm always talking about these safety tools you can have in your car to break the windows. And I always ask people, do you have one? No. Okay, well, shouldn't we be the most prepared people? We're in public safety. We should be the most situationally aware, prepared people out there. We should be like that. And if you're not, let's start working on it. Let's get better at that. And let's figure out how to make ourselves so invaluable that people will definitely want to hang out with us because we're ready to go, whatever we got out there. So work together. Contact the agencies in your area, the other agencies, fire, police, state police, whoever, and start talking to them about what would be our escape procedures if something should happen. I mean, what would you guys know we're going to leave our building? What can we call you with and say, hey, we're leaving. We're out of here. We're going to our backup center or we're going wherever. Have you even thought about telling your outlet agencies that maybe this is our plan of action if something should happen? Think about that. That's such a simple thing to me to talk to your other agencies and tell them, hey, we're going to be doing this. This is our evacuation procedures, or this is what we would do if something should happen to our building. I mean, that's simple stuff out there. So practice makes safe. Don't just say we have an emergency operations plan. Practice with it. Go out and actually try to say, what will we do if the lights all go out? Do you know how to start the backup generator in case it doesn't kick on? At my office, we had a pretty large generator that would usually kick on if the city power went out. This thing would kick on like automatically. You'd hear it run in the parking lot, this big running out there. Well, a couple of times it didn't start. Power would go out, knock everything out, and there was no power. So we'd be like, what the heck do we do at this point? So I went back and had the mechanic show us exactly how to run this thing. I made big posters of how to do it and put them right by the wall of this thing. So anybody working can go back there and go, step 1, turn this, step 2, turn that, step 3, push this, starts, move. Let's go do something else. We should all know our backup centers and all know how to restore power if something should happen, or if our 901s go out, if our CAD goes down, if our lights go out. It's important to think of these things. I mean, practice makes safe. I always try to remind people, just practice it. It'll make you much safer than you are out there. Practice situational awareness. Practice these things. So begin the conversation about safety. Go back and start talking to your agency about it. Hey, I watched this dopey guy talking about this unrest stuff, and he's making me think, are we safe at work? Are we really, truly? Have you went out and checked that parking lot to make sure that it's safe, that our cars are okay? Consider these things. Consider that stuff. So I just try to remind people to please start the conversation about safety. Just start it. With Showalter and Company, I always try to end classes talking about leaving a legacy, because you all do. Your legacy is being built every single day with every interaction, everything you do, you're building that legacy. If you go back and make your agency smarter, safer, and more protected, what's the legacy you're leaving? That's a big legacy, right? We want you to kind of remember those legacies and say, this is something that I'm doing. Whether you're saving lives on 911, whether you're doing whatever you're doing, you're creating that legacy for you. What's the legacy from the people that were there before you? Do you even know? Who was sitting in that chair before you got there? I mean, think of their legacy that they left behind. And I tell you, what's yours now going to be? If you're going to be that person who's proactive and talk about these things, that's what we want. We want that kind of perfect stuff out there. We want those kinds of things. So I remind everybody, please think about your legacy you're leaving. I want to connect with everybody on Facebook and Instagram. You can get a free patch from us or a decal about leaving a legacy. It's just so important to me to leave that lasting legacy. And I definitely appreciate it. I don't know who's coming on after this. It may be Nathan, maybe Ricardo. I'm not sure. It's Nathan. There he is. But thank you very much, everybody. I definitely appreciate everybody today. So there you go.
Hey, great session, Doug.
Thank you.
I had two final thoughts from my listening to that session. This is like the 4th time I've heard this session, and I take something away. I will say that I just ordered on Amazon a first aid kit and one of those little window breaky things. So you made an impact. You left a legacy with me, my friend.
There you go. There you go.
But I one of the things you said there at the end, I remember you said it in another session. I think it was maybe Be the Difference or the last Dare to Be Great. You said, just think about how many people are out there walking around because of something that you did.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
I love that quote. I mean, all the people that are on here watching that are dispatchers. I mean, you are. I mean, there's people walking around outside right now because of something you did over the phone.
That's right.
So, mad props. And then the other thing I wanted to say, and just think about how it's like studying for a test, right? You study for a test, and you feel like you get to a point where you're comfortable enough that when I go in there to take that test, I'm ready for it. Yeah. And I think that the stress relief that you get from that, you think about all these dispatchers and being prepared for these incidents that they hope don't happen, but they may. And we're seeing that they're becoming more and more common, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just think about the stress relief that you all would have if you knew that you were prepared. That So I just wanted to add that in there because I think that would be a huge.
I mean, that's what got me thinking about this, because back in '92 when those riots were going to LA, I never felt more unsafe driving into someplace in my life, because there was people running across the freeway with torches. There was all kinds. It was just madness, and I'm like, I just don't remember anybody in a management or supervisor position saying, "Hey, here's what we're doing for your safety. Here's what we're doing for that." It was more like just, it's going to get busy. Hold on, everybody. And it's like, well, we knew it was going to get busy, but
yeah,
like we need to feel safe at our job. That's it. So.
Yep, for sure. I know talking your co-host with the We Speak Dispatch, Joe McCarville, does his derecho session, and like, man, you think they thought that was going to happen on that day in the middle of a hurricane in the middle of Iowa? I mean, come on.
Yeah. And he's had some riot stuff at his place too. So I mean, it's happened. I mean, it's out there. It's you just got to be aware of these things. So
yep. Well, Great job as always, Doug.
Thanks a lot.
You're a gem in the industry. Thank you all for being a part of the session. Thank you all for being a part of Dare to Be Great 2021. Again, Ricardo, thanks for letting me be a small little tiny part of it. I'm glad I can help out. Thank you, Doug, for being a gold sponsor, Showalter and Company. Make sure you book trainings with them. I mean, you guys aren't going to be disappointed. He's done a great job of doing it for years. So
thanks very kindly. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So at 11:15, we have our silver sponsor sessions coming up. So jump out of here and pick out which silver sponsor session you're going to attend. And again, thank you all for being a part of this. Doug, great job.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. You guys have a great one.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.